Okay, so um, let's get started. This session will be recorded, so anyone that is not here can always go back to watch it. So in the last session, we looked at um, a couple of concepts, and I would like to believe that we stopped at loops. Oh no, we stopped at functions and local and global variables in functions, whereby if you have a variable that has been declared inside of a function, that variable is only accessible inside of that function. But if you have any variable declared outside of the function, the variable is accessible outside and inside of the function, which is the concept that MDM, um, Mozilla Developer Network or something, that they called closure. So I guess that was where we stopped in the previous class. So in the previous session. So in this session, we'll be moving on to arrays in JavaScript, how we can access arrays, modifies elements in an array, then loop through arrays, and yeah, we can just carry on from there. So I would share my screen now. So we can just use this document and ignore the other parts. So um yeah, I believe we all know what arrays are, but just to go over it again. Arrays are objects in JavaScript that allow us to keep multiple items or multiple elements in a variable. So, for example, we have an array on the right here. Arrays are represented by square brackets. So, we have an array here that keeps five elements, five numbers, and the whole array is assigned to this variable numbers. So, I can decide to do something like this. Let's say console.log, and I can log out the numbers. So if I run node index.js, that will print out the whole array for me. So this just like every other concept, it makes our job easier as programmers, because instead of typing this whole thing over and over again, we're able to just use this variable that has been assigned to this array. And in JavaScript, your array can hold multiple data types. So I can decide to come here and say this would be a string. The next one can be a boolean. The next one could be null. The next one can be undefined. And we can even have an object inside of my array. So your array can contain any data type in JavaScript. So, and if I still print it out, it is going to work just as expected. Now, let's assume I want to pick an element from this array. What I would simply do is call the name of the array. Then to access the element, remember, arrays they deal with like positioning. So the first element is the zeroth position of the array. Then this number two here is the first position. So if I say zero here, I would be expecting to get the first element, which is one. So let me make this random so it doesn't confuse us. So I just need you to understand that arrays start from zero. So the zero element is like the first element in an array. So if I say numbers into bracket zero, that will give me the first element, which in this case is 33. Okay, so similarly, if I say 1, that would give me the second element, which would be 44. And if I say 4, that will give me the fifth element, which would be 35, and so on. So if I say 6 or 5, that will give me the fifth element, which would be LO. So I can access any element in this array using this syntax. Now, if I want to access the last element, I can say -1, and that would return the second to the last element. So this is how we can access different elements in an array. Now, if I want to modify any of the elements, the first thing you would need to do is to access the element. So once we've accessed the element, then it is easy to modify that element. So let's say, for example, here I say numbers at 0 is equal to string string hey there. Then I now try to access the number at 0 now. Or um let's change this to let's change this to another thing, because our array no longer contains just numbers. So let me change the variable name. Um so what do you guys think would happen when I try to access the array at 0 here? So when I run this, you can see that it is returning a there, even though my zeroth element, which is the first element in the array, is 33. So that's because we have modified the element at that position, and we are now printing out the element. So so that is how you can modify elements in an array, and you can do this for any position, and it would work as expected. So if I do this, it will change the value at position 2 to that. But let's say before I modify it, let's say I am logging out whatever I have there. So let's say random array at 2. So we can see the difference. We can see here that we have 22. Then after the modification on line 5, we now have a there. So, and just like we've seen, you can change any data type to any other data type in JavaScript arrays. So now let's see how we can loop through arrays in JavaScript. Yeah, so the next part would be looping through arrays using the for loop. So just like we have seen earlier, I guess we've even looked at something like this while looking at for loops. So we would have our for loop, then we'll be starting from 0, and we'll be going over the length of the array. So would say random array dot length. And once we do that, we can access each element at that iteration for my particular array. So remember, for your for loop, you would have your initialization, and in this case, my I is starting from 0. Now, I'm passing in that value 0 here to get the element at that position. So this is going to return the first element. So I can decide to come here and say console.log element. So let's see what happens when we run this program. So you can see that it returns all of the elements in the array from 22 to A there, 33, 44, A there, and so on. So this is how we can loop through arrays using the for loop. So and just like the previous lesson, we can decide to maybe break when we hit a certain element and things like that. So we can perform multiple operations once we are able to loop through all of the elements in the array. So let's say for example we want to check how many times a particular number exists inside of the array. So we can simply use a for loop to do that. So let me change this element I have here, and let's see how we can go about that. So let's say I have 33 here again, I have 45, I have 67, I have 33. So I want to check the number of times that 33 is appearing in this array. So obviously the first thing I would need to do here is to loop through the whole array. But when I'm looping through the whole array, what I would like to do is check if the element at that iteration, so if the element is equal to 33, if it's equal to number 33, I would like to increase a variable. So let's say I create a variable here to help me keep track of my count.